I get some weird stuff. All right, guys, I think that we're live. I think. All right, it says that we're live.
Woo, woo.
I'm excited. Tonight I've got Joe from the YouTube channel SilverJackify. For a while, I was like trying to let people know that I was going to be on here with you, and I kept on saying Jackify because I thought that's what it was. For some reason, I was adding a T in there. I don't know where I got that from, but yeah, I was throwing a T on the end on SilverJackify. But no, SilverJackify. So Joe,
it's a made-up word. I get it.
Yeah, I make up words all the time. What did I say the other day in a video? I said like authentication or something. I don't know. I made it like I elongated that, and I got like 7 comments like authentication or whatever. Like, oh damn.
all my YouTube fans call me out on every little mistake I make. So
I know
all about it.
Oh yeah, yeah. All the little grammar errors and stuff, but
right.
It's all part of it. I don't do a ton of editing, so I kind of expect that. I know some of my content creator friends, they really like crack down on the edits. Like they're like, oh, I spent 8 hours editing this video. I'm like, dude, I haven't spent 8 hours editing like 5 videos. Like.
Yeah, okay. When I first started doing videos, I used and I always grew up saying Bauman. Like I that's how I've always said it, and then. Yep. I said it in videos, and people are like, dude, like everybody in the comments would be like, Bowman, what is wrong with you?
That's awesome. Well, hey, man, thanks again for joining me tonight. We're both dads running on fumes here at 9 p.m. Eastern. So thank you again. Also for people that have joined us, thank you for watching. I'm just going to kind of go through it with Joe. First off, how did you get into cards? How did that kind of start as a kid, or were you an adult? How did that start? Did you get out of it? Did you get back in? Kind of go through that with us.
Sure. Yeah, let me know if, this might be kind of a long story, but, hopefully it's interesting, but interject wherever you feel.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, my dad was an Indians fan, a Cleveland Indians fan. And, he brought me one, I live in New Jersey. And so he brought me to a Yankees Indians game, which, by the way, they're not the Indians anymore. I guess they're the Cleveland team of Ohio, whatever we want to call them now.
I didn't even realize that they switched that over. I heard something about it. I didn't know they actually did it, though.
Yeah, no, they're officially changed. They're going to remove the Indians name.
Okay.
Don't get me started on that, because that'll be a whole other video.
It's an even longer conversation.
Yeah. But anyway, my dad took me to that game. I remember it was Donnie Baseball, like around 1985. I think it was his MVP year. And he hit, I think it was 2 home runs in the first game that I was ever at. And even though, he was an Indians fan, I was like Mattingly's my hero, and so became a big Yankees fan, big Mattingly fan. And, a couple years later, I think it was, my neighbor had a baseball card collection. And at first I was, he showed me and I was like, what is this? I don't get it. But then he showed me, he had the 84 Topps Don Mattingly rookie. And I was like, at first I was like, yeah, whatever. But then eventually I was like, I got to own that card. If I'm going to be like a diehard Don Mattingly fan, I got to own the rookie card. But at the time it was like $20, and that was like, 4 weeks of allowance money for me. So, and that kind of, got me into it, because, you save up and and then you finally get the card that you always wanted. And then it snowballed from there. I kept adding to the collection. In the beginning it was like all Don Mattingly. Then I started doing Yankee stuff, and I started branching out, learning about like the Beckett. The Beckett was a big part of, what got me into it was like being able to follow, where a card was going, in terms of value, and, seeing if that up arrow.
I remember being so pumped up seeing like the new Beckett, because I never, as a kid, you don't really know, and you don't have like a concept of time when you're 8, and you're like, oh, there's a new Beckett on the shelf, and you don't, you're not really realizing it. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I used to do the same thing. You follow like the up arrow and the down arrow, and it's like 25 cents to 30 cents. Yeah.
Yeah, that would get me so pumped. And I put some of the cards that are going up, and I move them around in binders and all that. And I remember there was shows, in New York called the Gloria Rothstein shows. Have you ever heard of those?
I haven't heard of that. No.
Yeah, so those were the big card shows back in the 80s, early 90s, and my dad would take me to the Gloria Rothstein shows, and he was all about picking up 1952 Topps cards, so all about that 52 Topps set. And then of me, as a kid, not knowing any better, spent all my money on 88 Don Russ, 89 Don Russ, 87 Topps, 88 Score. Just would buy boxes and boxes of packs and just rip through packs, and it was just a lot of fun, So that was sort of, growing up. And then just like, Dustin, I don't know if you're the same for you, but, when I went to high school and college, I just kind of lost interest for a while. It was sort of the same thing for you?
No, I was actually a virgin until I was 35.
Oh,
So,
really?
Okay, yeah, that same exact story. I just want to throw a little twist in there, but yeah, because that's what we always talk about. That like everyone takes a break because they find out girls aren't into cards. Like, oh shit, I need to put this away. Like, no, yeah,
yeah, because you can't meet a new girl and have like boxes of cards.
Yeah, that's a real. Yeah, that's not exactly pushing the love connection through. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I took a break too.
Yeah, so anyway, I left the hobby for a while. I think I got back into it in 2011. And I remember one of the things I used to do at work is sometimes I'd just kind of sneak off during my lunch break and go to like Target or Walmart and get a blaster box of packs.
Yeah.
And like a heroin addict, like I would just open
sneaking around.
I'd get a box, I'd go into my car and open up a box of packs. And I remember thinking to myself, what a waste of money and time. And it's funny because at the time I'm pretty sure the first cards that I really kind of got back into was the 2011 Topps Update set. That set was out, and I was buying packs of cards of that and thinking to myself, what a waste of money. In the meantime, those packs today go for a fortune.
Now, that's what I was going to ask you. Was it Mike Trout? Was Mike Trout kind of was that what got you back in?
No, I was just it just so happened that when I kind of really got back into it, it was that was the set that was out, was the 2011 Topps Update. But I did that for a while. Like I just would just buy packs and stuff, and then I don't know, maybe a year or two later, it was Christmas time, and I'm sitting with my wife in bed, and she's like, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I'm like, "I don't know." You get to that point in life where you're like, I don't need anything. Like, I don't want anything. And she's like, "How about I get you?" She was going to get me a membership at Massage Envy. It was going to be like it was like every month for like 6 months. You go into Massage Envy, and it was a cool idea. It was awfully generous.
Yeah.
And I remember, I was like, yeah, that's cool. And then I was scrolling through eBay. I don't know why, but I was just like, I really would love to own a Babe Ruth card. Like I've always wanted to own a Babe Ruth card. And I go, how about instead of the Massage Envy, I just buy myself one Babe Ruth card. And it was actually this card. I'll just show you guys this particular card, the 48-49 Leaf.
That's wicked.
Now it's not this card though. So what happened was, I was brand new to collecting, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm sure a lot of people have kind of had this experience. Like I jumped right back into collecting. I didn't really do a lot of research, and I go on eBay, and I was suckered into buying a 48, 49 leaf ungraded card, you know, and it was like, I think I paid like $500 for that card, ungraded.
Yeah.
Looked real. I mean, it looked as real as any card I've ever seen. And the thought, and I don't know if you've ever had this thought, like when I first got back into collecting, is like, why would I spend thousands of dollars on a graded card when I can buy it ungraded and then just send it off for grading myself, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I could beat the system. So I learned the hard way, and this is part of the reason why, like, that kind of inspired me, and you know, to do YouTube as well, and you know, is to kind of hopefully pass on some of the mistakes that I made. And so I get the card in the mail, and as soon as I look at it, I don't know if you've ever had this happen to you, but like my heart sank. You know, like I knew right away. Like as soon as I got it in the mail, I was like, "This is a fake."
You're like, it's not 70 years old.
Yeah, yeah. You know, like I've never owned like a 48, 49 leaf card before, but I've seen enough. Like I've seen enough vintage cards to like, and it. You know what it reminded? It reminded me of you know, like a coaster that you get at like a bar, like one of those cheap coasters.
Yeah.
It was kind of like felt like that. And so a week later, there was a show at White Plains, New York. And so I brought it in, got it graded. Like, it, you know, back when grading didn't take like a year and a half to get your cards back. I had them actually graded that day. So I sent, you know, gave it to them. They came back and they were like, it's a fake. So I ended up, I was, you know, I made so many mistakes. Like I ended up asking the seller if he, like, for some reason, I was like, well, what if you give me just $400 back of the $500?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't realize that eBay sides with the buyer. You know, that's another thing I didn't know. Like, I didn't know that, like, I had all the power.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll send you the card back. I have it graded. So I had already paid for the grading fee, which was like $35, $40 because it was like same day grading. Sent it back to the person that sold it to me. The person ended up, you know, they gave me some story about how they didn't know what they were, you know, they were like, oh, I found it in the attic. I thought it was real. I'm like, well, it's not real. And they ended up giving me $400, but you know, it was $100 lesson. It was another $35 in grading fees.
Yeah.
And so, and then one last quick story, and then you can move on to whatever your next question is. So, so then I kind of like lost interest for a while.
After that experience,
yeah, I was like, you know what, this, you know, it's all bogus. It's all BS. You know, everyone's out there to try to, you know, beat you out of some money. And there's probably a part of that that's true, unfortunately. But I started to, you know, maybe a couple months later, I was like, you know what, let me do some more research. And so I did a ton of research. YouTube wasn't a big thing, at least not that I'm aware of, like, you know, with like where you could kind of go on YouTube and, you know, learn from collectors. So I did a lot of my research through like message boards and, you know, just, looking up prices and, you know, looking up the different grading companies that were out there. And I decided to, you know, give it another shot. And I remember I bought this card. I pulled these 3 cards out just for the story. I ended up buying this card. This is the 39 play ball Joe DiMaggio.
Oh, nice.
And this was basically the jumping off point for me. Was like I bought this card, and I remember I was so nervous that I was like, it wasn't going to get delivered to me. It was like a big purchase for me at the time. It was like a $500 card, and you know, they sent it to me in the mail. And I remember waiting at the post office, like right before they opened, and I like asked if, you know, if they received it, and I opened it up, looked at it, and I was like, yep, that looks like a legitimate, you know, vintage card graded by PSA. And I was just psyched. I was like, this is so cool. Like, how cool is it to own
That's awesome.
a card from 1939?
Yeah, dude, it's awesome. I mean, it's a piece of history you're holding. Yeah, no,
exactly.
I had the same thing with, well, it's funny. And for me, I mean, $500 for me today is a lot of money for a card. The most expensive card I've bought is a $650 card. And I just bought it a few weeks ago. And you probably noticed this too, but USPS slowed down, like the mail wasn't being delivered. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm sweating. It's been like 2 weeks and it's like sitting, I'm checking the tracking every day. I'm like, where is this thing lost? Like, I'm going to lose this money. I know I'm going to lose this money. And I go to the post office and I go to talk to them. I'm like, look, I've literally got like 10 packages that are on hold at the post office. They're like, oh yeah, your mail is on hold. And they're like, what? Like, and the lady was like, you have a wife? I'm like, yeah. She's like, yeah, she put your mail on hold. And she must have like accidentally did it. So it was like a big joke. And so I had like a dozen packages and it was in there. I've like been sweating over like a couple $1,000s worth of cards. Yeah. And it's just sitting there at the post office.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's like, I ended up like opening the package in the parking lot and like, basically like as soon as they opened too, I was like, do you have my card? Like, do you have my, so I know.
When you were talking about grading too, and tell me kind of your thoughts when you first came back in. When I saw graded cards, it definitely piqued my interest. But the thing I didn't understand was that PSA was like the leader. So I'd be on eBay and I'm like, okay, there's like GMA, there's PSA, there's Beckett, there's BVG, there's BV, there's BGS. Like what here? Are they all? And then I was thinking like, are these all just like garbage, like grading company, like everyone's a grading company type thing. So that's where I had to really kind of figure out. And then just saying, how many PSA slabs are on eBay, you kind of like figure it out and through message boards, like you said, but that whole thing was like, I was like, man, I love the grading piece, but what the hell is the difference between a PSA and a BGS? And why more? Why? And for me, like you, I mean, like I grew up with Beckett. So when I saw Beckett and BGS, I'm like, well, that's all I'm buying. Like I'm buying Beckett. That's what I know, and it took me a while to figure out like, oh, okay, there's, SGC and, other companies. So yeah. So let's shift into, you mentioned your YouTube channel. You came back in 2011. When did you start your YouTube channel? What kind of made you think to do that? And did you have other buddies that were doing it at the same time? Like, how did you think to do that? Because YouTube has really been big the last really like 3 years. But before that, there was people on it, obviously, but it's nowhere near as big. I mean, it wasn't as big back then as it is now.
Yeah, no, I think I did my first video in 2014. And no, I mean, so when I was kind of getting back into collecting and, I honestly thought I was the only person my age that was still collecting. Like I was like, I am the only one. I am a dinosaur. I tried to tell some of my friends that I had gotten a card and they were like, okay, great. Had no interest. And so, I don't know. I think I was just looking for an avenue to share my collection with somebody, and I had no idea that anybody would be interested in. I made like if you go to my first 2 videos I ever did on my YouTube channel, they're me playing the guitar in back there, right there, and so it was like not like when I created my YouTube channel, I had no intention of doing card videos or anything. So and then my third video on the channel was just, I decided, for the fun of it, really for my own, like, I was like, I would have been happy if I would have gotten 100 views. I thought I was going to get maybe 100 views over the lifetime of the video, but I was like, maybe somebody will watch it and, find it interesting. Like, like me, who knows? So I ended up doing, my first ever videos were top 50. And I did my, 50 to 26, and then I did another video 25 to number 1 of my cards, and then this card was the number 1 card. It was like it was sort of my motivation for doing the video. And I remember I did so much research that went into this video. I like looked up all the players and interesting facts. I still kind of do that to this day. I probably work too hard on videos. And did it, and then I ended up doing it on the floor over there. I didn't have like a tripod or anything, so I was holding my phone with one hand and then bringing the cards out with another and then looking at my notes over here. I remember I had like a major backache after it was all over. Yeah, and I did the video and I was like, no one's going to watch this, but you know what? I'll post it and see if anybody watched. And then I think, of course it's been like 6 years since I posted that, but I think it has like 50,000 views. But even in the beginning, like I was, I had a couple hundred views in the beginning and I couldn't believe that anybody was watching this. Like, and everybody, what was so cool about YouTube and the community that we have here on YouTube is everyone is so incredibly positive. I mean, of course, there's, a couple of trolls here and there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like 99% of the people are so supportive. They're like, it's like I'll post a video and it'll get like 200 likes, 2 dislikes. Everyone in the comments is like, we see the passion, we love that you're doing this research. And I was just like, that is like, it was so cool to, have that, feedback. And then I started to learn that there were other YouTube channels out there. And so I started watching those videos and learning about, there was so much stuff I didn't know, but it was great because I learned so much from other YouTube videos. And it helped me with my collecting and collecting the right types of cards. Because for me, it's about buying cards that are going to be that make me happy, but also cards that will in the long run be worth something. And I definitely I don't care what anybody says. Everyone's some people are just not interested in they're just collectors and they're not interested in investing, but nobody wants to get ripped off. Nobody wants to buy a fake Babe Ruth card for $500. So, so doing the research is really important, regardless of whether you're purely a collector or an investor.
I agree. Yeah. And outside of like the Donruss Diamond Kings, 88, 89, Diamond King stuff. When I was a kid, I collected a lot of football and basketball cards. So that's really, I'm heavy into those. But I found your channel probably 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And I would go to your channel as well as Baseball Collector. I think it's Mike, maybe. Baseball Collector, and then the Bench Clear guys, like a lot of those channels, because you guys have some really good baseball cards, and some really nice vintage stuff. So that's where I would learn a lot about, like that DiMaggio card that you showed. Like that's not even on my radar. Like I don't know, I don't have any sort of a purview on vintage baseball. So those channels were really helpful for all of that.
Yeah, I don't know. The cool. The thing that I've tried to expand, I was very baseball focused when I first got on YouTube, and I've been trying to expand my knowledge more. But I totally recommend looking into vintage, because it really is it's basically artwork, and especially cards from like the T206 set. And the cards from the 1800s, the fact that there's cards out there that are that old, that are part of like our history. And, I just think it's so cool that they even exist, and when you get a card that's in great condition from like the 30s or the 20s, or even the 1800s, I don't know, to me, there's nothing cooler than owning that piece of history. And that's why I try to recommend to like anybody that watches my channel to try to pick up, even if it's not your thing, if you're totally into modern, buy you can get a T206 card for like $25. And it's just so cool when you have that, that card is 100 years old. And, it's of a player, and you learn about that player. Like people, if you learn about players from the early 1900s, they were out of their minds. They were all it's unbelievable, some of the stories you hear. And then a lot of times they had to do something other than just baseball. So they were, some of the other jobs that they'd be involved in. And I don't know. It's really fascinating stuff. But
you have to appreciate the guys that were all in on the game when they weren't getting paid to do it. Not like today's guys. You know, I mean, those guys, they were playing their guts out, and they weren't getting paid millions. They weren't getting paid thousands. They were literally like had second and third jobs in the off season type stuff. Yeah.
One of my favorite guys is I mentioned him a lot. Oh yeah, there we go. Joe, I can't say your last name. Poirot, Parrot. Rube Waddell is my favorite character from the 1900s. The guy was just nuts. Like he would cartwheel off the mound. There would be a fire truck that would drive by, and he'd go chasing after the fire truck, like in the middle of the game. Can you imagine, like a baseball player, like a guy? And he was real. Like he outdueled Cy Young. Like he was one of the greats. And he was crazy. He was out of his mind. Like, and he would wrestle like lions and bears all season. I mean, the guy was like, he's hilarious. And you like learn about this guy. I don't know. So I highly recommend, looking into some of these guys, because it's makes for some great stories. And then on top of that, some of them were in multiple wars. Like that's another thing. It's like, players from the 50s, going off to World War II, and then like a year later coming back and playing baseball again. It's like amazing, like I can't imagine today, like Mike Trout being sent off to, war. And then, it's just a different world.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's where it's like people are like, oh, it's just a card. It's just a piece of cardboard or whatever. But it's not. I mean, when you're talking about the vintage stuff, especially, it's an artifact. It is literally from another time period, and even if it's the 80s, I mean, like we're talking about like early 1900s, but the 80s was a whole different world, pre-internet too. I mean, like it's all of those things represent different time periods that all have kind of cool things about them. So yeah. And then maybe, and I know with the modern cards, let's kind of shift into that too. So are you also, you're obviously big into vintage as well. And I know that like, it's funny to me how some people think that 80s cards are vintage, like, late 80s cards are vintage, or 1990 or is vintage. But are you also buying kind of the new prospects? Do you like to buy and sell those, to help fund kind of the old, the bigger stuff and all that? Or do you kind of just stick with vintage stuff that?
Yeah, no, I try to do a little bit of everything. I'm definitely into. So, like, the problem though with I'm trying to get away from prospecting. I like to do it, but it is so hard. It is so hard to predict.
Well, and I say prospecting, I know that's a different. In baseball, that's different because you're talking about literally like 17-year-old, 18-year-old prospect. Yeah. I just mean too, even a young guy like Soto or Acuna, like guys that have proven themselves. That are proven something, but we still probably consider them prospects just because they're early in career.
Yeah, no, I have I have the Acuna Sapphire. I got the Tatis Sapphire. I do want to get like a big Soto card. That's a big gap in my collection right now. But yeah, I'm the modern guys. That's part of the fun of collecting is owning it's almost like owning shares in a particular player. When you own cards for modern guys that are playing right now, and now because I have that Tatis Sapphire and the Acuna Sapphire, for example, when they're at bat, like I'm rooting for them. Even as a Yankee fan, I'm like rooting for them to do better, because if Acuna has an awesome year in 2021, which I hope he does, it only increases the value of that card. So. I think owning modern cards is part of the fun of collecting, and that's as much as I'm saying like I don't get how people don't collect vintage. I also don't get how people don't collect modern, because there's something about owning a card and then rooting for that player to succeed because you own that card and you believe in that player. Like you try to pick maybe 3 to 5 guys that you believe in, that you're like that guy is going to have a big season this year. So you pick up a big card and then you see if you're right. And then if you're right, you could end up doing very well for yourself.
Do you see in baseball cards, and I'm asking because I'm typically working in basketball and football, but with baseball cards and basketball, I feel like there's so much price already baked into a lot of guys, young guys. If you're going to go buy Luka Doncic, you're going to pay a premium to do that. And you'll see that with a lot of the younger kind of prospect basketball guys. Do you see in baseball with some of those guys, are the prices already baked in, you feel like, with a lot of them? Or is it kind of like more stable in baseball to where it's not as like, and I'm asking because I'm not buying Soto or Acuna, but I know that those are, or Tatis, I know those are kind of the hot guys, in baseball. Are there still affordable cards, for those guys, affordable rookie cards that aren't like wildly, overprinted?
Yeah, I do think that the baseball is not as, I have noticed with basketball, it's a lot more volatile than baseball, at least last year. I think the problem was with last year was there was a lot of new collectors coming in, and a lot of the new collectors were focusing on basketball, whereas your baseball collectors have been doing this, I think, a little bit longer. And so I don't think you're going to see, like, in terms of is there potential baked into the price? Yes. But I don't think it's as maybe as dynamic as, basketball, because, I just feel like some of the baseball collectors are a little bit more, they've been around a little bit longer. And so they know to not overpay for some of these prospects, and that doesn't mean that doesn't happen. Like Jason Dominguez, for example, like people paying thousands of dollars for Jason Dominguez, prospect cards. He's like a 17-year-old who hasn't, done anything yet, and people are paying. So like that still happens, but I do think it's a little bit more volatile. Like I just saw basketball prices, just from what I saw, were going way, I don't know how people deal with it. I would have a heart attack if, my card, one day is worth $2,000, the next day it's worth $10,000, then the next day it's worth $50, then it's up.
Yeah, you make a good point, though. I mean, it's not like it's always been like that. It's like really been the last 12 months that it's been like wild, price wise. I mean, if you go back, 18 months, Luka Doncic, Prism PSA 10s were $60, Actually, I had bought 4 of them. I sold them on the way up to where they are now. Unfortunately, I didn't sell them at the $2,000 mark. I sold them at like $400. I was like, $450? You kidding me? I spent $60 on these cards, so I sold off on the way up. But yeah, I mean, those cards were really reasonable. And then of course they're not now, but it's not like, I think it's funny. We have like short memories to where it's like, oh, it's just expensive, but it's like a year and a half ago, it wasn't expensive at all. It was really
one of the things I noticed. So I noticed a lot of people were getting back into the hobby, right, last year. And so I mentioned to my channel, like to people that watch my channel, I'm like, this is what's going to happen. I tried to explain to. So what's going to happen is everyone that's getting back into the hobby, they're going to first go after the cards that they grew up with, that they always wanted. So like the cards that are going to go up a lot are like your 89 per deck, Griffey, and your the 80s cards. And then once the season starts, which it eventually did, the players that are playing are going to go way up in value. It's interesting to watch the people that are getting back into the hobby. Like they're very predictable. So now what they're doing is they're getting into the iconic cards. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the iconic cards, they're starting to understand that. And it's just funny to watch because I can get a feel. I watch where card prices are going all the time. And so now what's happening is, now that they've kind of educated themselves, like they started to get into prospecting and, but now what they're doing is they're putting money into, I don't know if you noticed, but the 86 Fleer Jordan has gone through the roof. Like it's unreal. Like I can't believe what the hell is going on with the 86 Fleer Jordan.
You're literally announcing like what my video is about tomorrow. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And they start to go, okay, well, I saw the 86 Fleer Jordan go crazy. And now they're going, okay, well, how do I predict what's going to happen next? So then they're also going into the documentary. So they're going, okay, well, there's a Tiger Woods documentary coming out. So let me go buy Tiger Woods card. So I don't know if you noticed, but the Tiger Woods card has gone skyrocketing high. So you can almost predict like what's going to happen next because with documentaries, because there's going to, I believe there's a Magic Johnson, Larry Bird documentary coming out. Like if you just know when the documentaries are going to come out, like you can predict that's going to happen for the next year or two at least, where every time a documentary comes out, like if you plan ahead, that card's going to go way up in value because they're just going to buy it up. And then all it took for the Tiger Woods card to go down was Baseball Investor said something about it, and now the card's plummeting back down again. Which is kind of annoying because I own 4 of those. I bought them when they were like $200. And I was like, oh, great, they're up to $1,000. And the Baseball Investor was like, oh, they're going to go down. And sure enough, they plummeted back down because the new people that are new to this hobby, they're looking anywhere they can for advice.
Yeah,
and they're not doing their own research. They're just kind of like listening to whatever Gary Vee says or certain investor guys say, and they're just following the following the leader, I guess, which is, I don't know if that's the way to go. Like, I've been trying to educate my channel that the time to buy is when a card is down. Like when a card goes down, that's the time to buy. When a card's going up, that is not, like now is not the time to buy an 86 Fleer Jordan card. Right. It's the worst time to buy. But you should buy it if you do analysis on like what cards are going down and for no reason. Like it's one thing if you're, you see a card going down like Gary Sanchez, like, okay, fine. But if you see like a Hall of Famer or, I think I saw somebody mention Albert Pujols, guys that maybe are flying under the radar. Miguel Cabrera, I love Miguel Cabrera right now. Guys that no one's really paying attention to that may not have seen that bump. Those are the cards to go after. Anyway.
I agree with you. I catch myself because I do the same thing sometimes where I'm chasing a little bit. I'll get excited. You're watching sports and you're like, oh man, that guy's just going off. I wonder what his cards look like. And then of course, like the cards have already reacted by the time you get, at them, but you said it. I mean, it's kind of an extension of like fantasy sports where like preseason, you're trying to figure out, okay, which team's going to have a great season, which quarterback or which, shortstop or first baseman or whatever. And you're basically just speculating on those guys. But what's good is if you do know sports pretty well, some of that stuff is not that hard to kind of gauge. If you have if you're following it, but you're right. I mean, there's people that'll jump in and they'll say, oh, I can make a few bucks. It's like, no, I mean, you really have to kind of dig into it to really make a few bucks because you can easily lose a lot of bucks if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. I don't know what you think about it, but the influencers, it's amazing how much power they have. It is kind of scary in some ways because there are certain influencers that all they have to do is say one thing and the card's going to go skyrocketing. All it takes is Gary Vee saying one thing on his Twitter and the card will triple overnight.
I think that he was kind of, he's become more self-aware with that. Now he's like, okay, he's real careful. I think that at first he was probably just thinking, I'm just another guy talking about cards and whatever. And then it's like, oh, wow, maybe this does actually have an effect. I'm not sure if he really knew, that it would have that sort of effects, like when he was talking about Devin Booker's or whatever.
Yeah. And I think I'm saying is channel. When Baseball Investor mentioned the other day that the Tiger Investor, Sports Card Investor, when he mentioned that the Tiger Woods card was going to go down, I don't think he realizes that when he says that, it's going to have a direct impact on prices. Like I saw that Tiger Woods card after he posted that video went from like $1,000 card to a $700 card. And I don't think that was because of the market. I think that was directly impacted by people watching his video. I really do. I think people like the influencers like have a direct impact and I'm aware of it. Like I have to be careful sometimes, I think, and I'm like a small fish. You know, it's weird because I want to help, but at the same time, like I don't want to, you know, create a situation where people are going to end up overpaying for something that I'm recommending, and then they're going to end up getting screwed because, you know, like when Tiger Woods' cards goes down, like you should be buying it, you know, like okay, go ahead, let it go, come down, and then buy it. You shouldn't be buying a card that the influencer is saying is a good buy right now, because you're going to end up like, by the time you hear that and buy it, it's going to be too late anyway. You're going to end up overpaying for it. So
it's like with all assets, if you're, I mean, stocks and real estate and everything else, it's like, you know, buying high, it's always, you're always vulnerable when you're buying high, hoping it goes higher. You know, if it's at all-time highs and you're getting in, you know, but I mean, you could be fine, you know, it could keep on going, but you just never know. So yeah, you're right. It's always, you know, it's tough, especially too with like, we're in like a weird time with sports cards to where, you know, we're in uncharted waters where it's like, is this going to be like a serious asset class where, you know, you have fractional share companies buying up a ton of inventory and vaulting it and whatever else? Is it going to actually be a massive thing, or is it just kind of a, you know, couple of years and then it kind of goes back to more of a, you know, cottage hobby? It might never be the same sort of cottage hobby, but there's probably some middle ground, you know, that it'll find its way to.
Definitely.
I'm guessing, but all right. What was I was going to ask you something. You were talking about 80s, people going back to 80s. What are your thoughts? Because you're a baseball guy. I've heard a lot of people talking about Barry Bonds, you know, like buy into Barry, like look at Barry Bonds, like the guy's got the stats, and yeah, you know, he had like, you know, maybe he was taking some stuff, but people are forgiving, you know. I mean, do you think he's going to get in the Hall? Like, do you think that, you know, I mean, have you bought into the Barry Bonds stuff? Do you, or are you kind of like, I'm not really a fan?
No, I think Barry Bonds is, you know, I think what's going to end up happening over time is people will eventually, I don't know when this will happen, but I think that there will be a sort of, you know, how America is, you know, eventually there's forgiveness, and, you know, people start to appreciate some of the things that, you know, you look at Shoeless Joe Jackson, I guess, you know, for example, you know, like we kind of look at, you know, his cards are worth more than anybody's from back in that day. And so, you know, I do think that his, you know, his cards will do well over time. I had my eye on the 86 Tiffany for a while.
Yeah.
That card is now just kind of taken off to the point where I'm just like, I don't know. I don't want to pay those prices. And I think a lot of people are kind of in the same situation with a lot of cards nowadays. Like I was able to buy cards at like 25% of the price, like just a year or two ago. And so it's really hard for me to justify, like I could have gotten that Barry Bonds Tiffany in a PSA 10 for like $800 like 2 years ago. And now it's like, I'd probably have to pay $4,000 to $5,000. It might be more than that at this point. And I refuse to pay that price. And and even though in my, like, you know, if I'm thinking rationally, that might actually still be a good buy. Cause I, you know, based on, you know, what I just said, I think that whether he gets into the Hall of Fame or not is like, doesn't matter to me, because as long as they're talking about him, I think it's going to help his cards. Like the more they talk about Barry Bonds, whether he belongs in the Hall of Fame or not, just, you know, that helps his card value actually.
Yeah.
And so, but I just refuse to pay those prices. Like I'm not paying $5,000 for a card that I could have bought for $800 2 years ago. I can't do it. I can't do it. So
yeah, and that is kind of the problem with people that have been in longer than a year, because you do remember what prices were. So I'm totally with you on a lot of cards like that. I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna wait. Guys, in the comments, if you have any, or in the chat, if you have any questions for Joe or anything you want to throw out there, we're getting to that point. We're going to get to some Q&A. If you have any specific questions, we'll go ahead and take those. I want to ask you too, Joe, what are kind of your thoughts or hopes, I guess, for the hobby in 2021 as we move into 2021? Are there certain things that you hope get better, or are there things that you're happy about, things that you're not happy about? Are you planning to go to the national, if there is a national, at the end of July? What's kind of your overall take on cards this year?
Yeah, I like maybe I'm still very. I think that there's still a huge amount of growth potential in sports cards. I think I'm totally psyched. I know a lot of people don't like what's happened to the hobby, but I love it. I think it's so awesome. And the reason why I love it so much is because, like I said, when I got back into collecting in 2011, and then this is part of the reason why I told you the story, was that, when I did that video in 2014, I thought I was a unicorn. I thought I was the only one out there that cared about, collecting anymore. And the fact that, that there's so many people now that are into it. Like I have, high school friends now that are collecting a little bit. I have college friends that are collecting a little bit. And I have this whole YouTube community. I don't know if you saw that, Dustin, but like there was, a pretty awesome group of guys that got together in Chicago in 2019, and it was so much fun. And I went to the National in Atlantic City in 2016 with my dad. I didn't know a single other person there. I felt like I walked the floor and everyone was like older than me. Like it was like me or people older than me. There was no energy. It was just kind of sad. It was like a sad situation. And then 2019, I went to Chicago, and there were like 40 to 50 other, people that knew me from YouTube and were like saying hello to me. And, then we took an awesome group picture at the bar, and it was just so much more fun. It was like so cool to hang out with everybody. And I think that's what it's all about. Like, regardless of whether the card prices go up or down, I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think that a lot of people are in it for the long haul. Like, I think a lot, there are going to be people that are going to come and go. And, hopefully when COVID disappears and we can all go back to life as usual, that, there's going to be people that are not going to have time for this anymore. But I still think that there's a lot of people that are here to stay for a long time. And I think that's awesome. I think that there's going to be, I'm going to be making friends for life. Like I'm going to be making friends for the next 30 to 40 years, and we're going to be going to the National every year and be talking about, cards that we purchased and, memories that we had. And I think it's awesome, and in comparing it to where this hobby was 4 years ago is phenomenal. So I'm very excited for, 2021 and beyond.
I'm with you. I've never been to a national before, and it's going to sound kind of weird to say, but I remember when card shows were huge in the late 80s. I was in Florida. I was in Panama City, Florida, and I remember they would have a card show like one weekend out of the month, like every single month, because cards were so big back then, you remember. But there's literally like tables throughout the entire shopping mall. And I went to my first card show maybe 2 months ago. Since then, from after 30 years, and it was a bigger show. It had like 200 tables. I mean, it was not a small show, but it was very small in comparison to what it was back then. So I'm looking forward to the National because I feel like, and I know that's going to be even bigger than what I remember as a kid, but I feel like that'll be more of what I remember. It's going to be part of the nostalgia piece. So yeah, I'm excited to go.
Yeah. And I guess to answer your question, I do have every intent of, going to the National. I'm kind of playing it by ear right now. I just kind of want to see where we're at.
Everybody is.
Yeah, I know a couple of friends of mine on, that have already booked their airplane, they've booked their hotel. I haven't done that yet, but I feel like I have time to do that. Like, I just want to see how things kind of pan out. But I do, assuming everything, is, relatively normal, and they're still having it, then yeah, I'll be there. That's the plan. And I can't tell you, you have no idea how awesome. Like, I don't think until you're at the National, I don't think you really have any idea how phenomenal it is to,
Yeah.
be it like, all these guys that you see on YouTube that, that have their own channel and you've been watching, like, it's weird. It's like you meet all these guys, like you're meeting celebrities, first time. And we know none of us are celebrities at all, but it's just so cool to see them, like guys that you've been watching on your phone or on your computer for years. Now all of a sudden you're seeing them, and you're like, hey, let's, and you're like, bounce a couple ideas off me, and you're like, I'm looking at this card, and I want to get your thoughts, and I don't know, it's a lot. It really was phenomenal in 2019. So I'm looking forward to it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. All right, I'm going to go back. I did catch a couple of good questions. I'm going to try to scroll back up. There was one question to the effect of, what is the #1 card on your want list right now? And by the way, I'm really jealous of that Bird Magic Johnson rookie you got. It's a 7. You got it in a 7, right?
Yeah, I got a 7.
Yeah, that's a wicked card.
To wrap up the year. Yeah, I mean, for me, I usually have about like 10 cards that are on my want list at any particular time. There's I've been wanting to get the Jim Brown rookie for a long time now. I feel like, so one thing of like, the best way that I could describe what I try to collect is like, I'm trying to, have a piece of history from like, for me in the beginning, it was about baseball, like having the greatest cards of baseball history. And now I've kind of ventured outside of baseball a little bit, although still, there's still a bunch of cards in baseball that I don't own. But yeah, the Jim Brown's a card that I've been really dying to own. The Ty Cobb Bat Off Shoulder, it's a T206 card, is a card that I've been dying to get since the 2019 National, actually. And
what do those run? What are the price points, for graded ones?
Oh, it's all over the place. Honestly, like I can't even, the vintage cards are all over the place. I mean, it's so hard to kind of, I try to do a video sometimes where I'm like, okay, this is, this card's going up, this card's but vintage cards are so hard to nail down because as I pointed out in previous videos, like a 4, like a PSA 4 could range, between like, 3 to 7,000, depending on how it looks, and they're like, especially with vintage cards, you can't just buy the grade. You have to look at the card, and because I think you're foolish to just kind of trust that every PSA 3 Ty Cobb should all be worth exactly the same, because I think that's a big mistake. Like the more seasoned collectors are going to recognize that the grade doesn't matter. Like it helps a little bit, but at the end of the day, you want a nicely centered card that's like, aesthetically pleasing. I would rather own a like Ty Cobb bat off shoulder PSA 2 that's nicely centered than a PSA 4 that's like way off center, like that looks like a mess, and that happens all the time. So but
do you buy SGC for vintage too, since they've got kind of a, that's kind of their bread and butter a little bit, is for them is vintage, or do you just stick with PSA for everything?
No, I like SGC for the vintage. Like this card I picked up last year.
Oh, that's right, that was SGC.
Yeah, that's SGC. I mean, I try to stay to PSA and SGC for vintage, and Beckett and PSA for modern.
I saw a question. Did you buy a Hulk Hogan rookie card or something to that effect recently? Somebody was asking like about the Ric Flair set or something. Like, what do you like the? Oh, okay. Well, hold that. We'll go to this one. If Joe could have one Yankee player of all time be the poster child for the Yankees, who would you choose?
If one Yankee player of all
time, I guess who's like the greatest Yankee of all time? That's kind of a impossible one.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to understand like what you mean by like poster child. I mean, obviously it's Babe Ruth. I mean, Babe Ruth is, he represents baseball and therefore represents the Yankees. I obviously he was, drank a lot of beer, ate a lot of hot dogs, and but and if you wanted like the guy that always does the right, the captain, of course, Derek Jeter. I mean, he was always, presented. The guy was a phenomenal speaker. I was actually at the last game at Yankee Stadium. His speech was like, I was like, the dude, like that guy can get in front of a room and say all the right things, and every interview always like answered every question exactly how the interview would want her to. So I guess he could be the poster child. It depends on what the context of the question is.
I've got a Jeter story, a short one. I've indirectly met Derek Jeter as a teenager. I was working at a movie theater in Tampa. I was working the concession stand, and he came in line. He was in my line, and he was with like this was probably like 97, 98. So
yeah.
he wasn't married. This was just like one of his dates. And he got a small popcorn and a bottled water with no butter on it. So if you want to be a pro athlete, don't put any butter on that popcorn.
Yeah, it's like everything he does is perfect. Like he just how did he date all those women and not one of them ever had anything bad to say? Like, how is that? How do you even do that? You know what I mean? Like every ex-girlfriend I ever had, like always had something.
Something, yeah. Something.
Had something on me, right?
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. So I don't know
either he's the most like charming guy in the world, or maybe he's just paying him well. I have no idea. Right. Yeah, that guy is squeaky clean.
Yep.
I agree with you. All right, let's go back to that Ric Flair question. So you bought a Hogan. Do you own Ric Flair cards or any interest in any of that sort of stuff? And were you a wrestling fan too in the 80s as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess last year I started going on this GOAT collection. So I wanted to own the greatest of all time in every sport. Unfortunately, I ended up doing this, probably a year too late, because now every sports, all the sports cards out there are climbing in value, regardless of anything. Like Pokemon has been going crazy, and now wrestling cards are going crazy. But I thought it would be cool to own at least what the wrestling fans seem to say. I spend a lot of time on Blowout, which, by the way, if you guys want to learn, you want to do your research, spend a lot of time on Blowout. The people on there are really, really smart. And there was a thread that said, what is the greatest, wrestling card of all time? And they all seem to agree. Like everyone seemed to agree that the 82 All-Star Hulk Hogan was the greatest card of all time for wrestling. And so, as part of my, desire to collect all the GOATs, I went ahead and bought the, I think I have it back here. There it is right there. The 82 Hulk Hogan. But yeah, I guess, I of course, in the when I was a kid in the 90s, I got into WWE for a while.
Oh, yeah. I remember it was WWF.
Yeah, WWF. I have a hard time saying WWE, actually.
I know. Yeah, Ultimate Warrior and all that stuff. I saw a comment about the Ultimate Warrior. Absolutely.
Yeah, Ultimate Warrior was my favorite, actually.
Yeah,
Ultimate Warrior. But I recognize that Hulk Hogan, at least for me, is the GOAT for me.
Yeah.
I know Ric Flair, like, I actually debated, should I get Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan? But I was like, in my heart of hearts, I feel like Hulk Hogan is the GOAT. So I went with him, but I do want to get the Ric Flair. And that's on my top 10 list that I was talking about earlier. The Ric Flair is definitely on there, which is basically the same boring card, but it's like blue, with it. Ric Flair was a nut. He's like Rube Waddell.
That is awesome. I haven't gotten any wrestling cards yet. I guess, and I was thinking the same thing too. It'd be good to have GOATs. I did look at that Tiger Woods card, but it was already at like $300 or $400, and I saw that it was like $50. That upper card that everyone's chasing now, I guess. But then you see how many of them are out there, and then I was just like, I would have wanted something more rare if I could find it. A couple of my buddies did actually get like an auto or some other kind of other type of card that's done a little bit better because it's just more scarce. But yeah, no, I totally get the GOAT thing. I've been kind of in that same mood of like, I probably need to move some of my smaller stuff and start getting more into, that sort of thing. And that's what I've been trying to do. There was one question. Do you have anything big on that back wall, the card wall back there? Somebody was asking, like, anything special back there.
No, that is like the wall of crap back there. I've had that thing that's actually fallen like 2 or 3 times. And so I used to have like some of my best cards in there. And then after it fell, I was like, there's no way I'm putting a really valuable, because now it's just filled with like, I don't know, I have like a Manny Machado and a PSA 9 and a Yasiel Puig and a BCCG holder. So no, there's nothing too exciting back there. The keg Raider is probably worth more than the.
I know somebody asked what you have on tap there.
I actually don't have anything. I sadly to admit, the problem with a keg Raider is that you end up having to drink the same beer, like especially during COVID-19, because I'm not having people over as much. I ended up like drinking and then you get sick of the same beer, because then you're like, oh, I don't want any more of this, like whatever the beer it is. Yeah. So I don't know. It was cool having it for a while, but now with COVID, it's like, why am I gonna? My wife doesn't really drink beer, and so it's just that it would just be up to me to drink like a keg of beer by myself. So right now it has nothing on tap.
I know we've been drinking a lot more wine over the last 12 months than we have ever. Actually, what I've had to do, I've been going to spritz now. So I'm like the family spritzer is what they call me, like the spritz guy, because of all the wine. If you just add, sparkling water to it, then you can, like dilutes it and it's all good. So yeah, trying to curb that a little bit in 2021, get back on track a little bit, but
yeah, good call.
I'm making all the excuses like, hey, it's been a tough year. Let's open another bottle.
I know.
What do you see let's move back to YouTube here. We're about an hour in, so we'll probably wrap up in about 10, 15 minutes if you guys have any more questions. But as far as your YouTube channel goes, do you have any kind of, goals for this year or anything different that you want to do? Or do you want to just kind of continue on with, kind of the stuff that you've been doing?
I'll probably continue to do what I've been doing the last year or so. I have this kind of fantasy of getting my collection down to like 300 cards. I would love to get it. Like, I have so many cards that just kind of collect dust, and I just don't have the time to get rid of it all. But I would love to. So I think my collecting goals, and I preach this on my channel, and people that watch my channel are probably sick and tired of me saying it, but it's all about quality over quantity. And I would rather, pick up 10 cards this year. Like if I were to really do a good job this year, I'd pick up like 10 cards this year, and that's it. And not a single, I do the rookie explosion box just to get my, it's always fun to open some packs.
Yeah.
There's something about owning a quality card that I just end up enjoying those cards more. And then the other cards end up just collecting dust in like a box, somewhere in my closet. So, so I think like I'm probably going to continue on the path that I've been following, but maybe even to like a further extent. Like I'll probably, like I'm right now, I haven't bought anything yet this year, which may not seem like a lot. I mean, we're only 13 days into the year, but, like I'm doing my best to like save up, buy one card, and then work on saving to the next, and that's, to me, that's the way to go. That's, for me, that's not only is it better from an investing perspective, but it's also more, I actually enjoy it more because I get more out of owning cards that I like the 4 that I just showed off for the 5 billionth time, which I've showed off 1 million times on my channel. And then there's cards that I own, where they've just kind of, they're collecting dust, like I don't ever look at them. So, so.
Yeah, the top 50 video is the only 50 cards. You've like consolidated down. It's like it's the same cards, but they've changed spots. Now, number 47 favorite card is this. Yeah, I need to consolidate too. I'm kind of in the same boat where I've been I bought stuff over the last year to kind of buy it and sell it to flip some things, and I need to go ahead and probably move those and just get into some different stuff. Same boat.
Yep.
All right. Dale Earnhardt, GOAT of racing.
Yeah. I haven't gotten the GOAT of racing yet. So
I guess it's Richard Petty or Dale Earnhardt. Is that?
Yeah, I don't know. I like that's. I'm starting to get into sports that I know nothing about. So like,
yeah,
I bought a UFC. Who I thought UFC was all over the place. I ended up getting George St. Pierre. But I'm sure everyone has a different opinion about who the UFC GOAT is, but like, I'd like to, hear what people say about, I know nothing about car racing, but I would buy it. I would buy a Dale Earnhardt rookie. Like, that makes sense to me.
I know. I've been looking outside of the box on stuff like Fortnite cards. I was like, all these kids play these games, and like, is Fortnite in 20 years going to be Pokemon? Like, what's going to be Pokemon in 20 years? But then I'm like, do I really want to buy that and hold it, and then and then sell it? It's like, probably not. So I just haven't bought anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know if I can get into that. There's certain things I don't know if I could ever get into that.
Yeah, Omar, do you think the UFC card market will explode? This is kind of one of those things. This actually makes me think of the 90s a little bit, because here's the reality is like, I'll just throw out an example. There was a Dick Tracy movie that was made, and there was Dick Tracy cards. I've got Tales from the Crypt cards from the 90s. My point is like, they made all cards for everything in the 90s. And so with a lot of these things, I kind of wonder if we're getting there, to that point where it's like, we're getting so many different types of cards, different sets, it's, and that could definitely happen. There could be UFC or tennis cards have seen a rise with some of those, Federer and Agassi and some of those cards. I've seen that, but not everything probably is going to move up, so that's always kind of the thing is like, do you want to speculate on all those different things or stick with what you know? Yeah. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Joe?
Well, that's why I try to just buy the GOAT, cause I'm not really involved. Like, I bought one card, I think I spent like $20 on the George St. Pierre card, but I totally think that, one of the things you look at is, where sports are going, and there's certain sports that are on the rise and certain sports that are, falling in interest, and UFC is one of those sports that is on the rise. So I could totally see those cards, being, exploding at some point, but it's hard to tell, because like, you don't know if like the people that are into UFC, will they ever get into sports cards? Maybe, like UFC cards never existed at like, I think there's, with people getting into basketball, like, they remember collecting as a kid. So they, it's natural to get, collecting as an adult, but like, do people like, do people collect UFC cards as a kid? Obviously not. So, I don't know, but yeah, I could see it, definitely getting more popular. There's definitely going to be some people that get into it. So.
Yeah, and I could see guys like McGregor and, those big names that have big personalities, maybe that'll be like Mike Tyson cards down the road. I would have liked to have, some of those Mike Tyson stuff. I think that's cool. So I could see that. Did
you see that garbage, like that they're making Garbage Pail Kid Sapphire cards?
Oh, I didn't see the Sapphire. Now I saw I thought it was hilarious. There was a box. It was like 30-year or 40-year anniversary. It was called like the Midlife Crisis box. Like, that pretty much sums it up right there. Because if you're, because that was literally those sets were only like, the first couple of sets were like from 85 to 87, and then they went out for a while, and then they came back with more series and all that. But like, that's when it exploded. Was like, there was like 2 years where it just went nuts.
I was this close to buying a box of Garbage Pail Kid Sapphire cards, or like a box, and then I was outbid, and I was like, maybe it's for the best.
It was meant to be. Yeah. Yeah, no, and that was just right before my time. Like I wasn't into Garbage Pail Kids. That was like right before I got into it. I was probably like 5. I was born in 81. So that was like hitting right when I was like 5, 6 years old. So it's just a little bit before. If I was like 8, 9, 10,
right?
Then, I probably would have been into it. But
yeah, and what they're doing is they're doing the Series 1 and Series 2. So it's like, all the cards that I, remember as a kid. So I don't know. I might have to buy a box. We'll see.
Did you ever have what is it, the Bad Nicky or the Little Nicky or that number 1 card, the one that's the most valuable in a PSA 10? It's like the number 1, Series 1, the first card printed, but it's valuable because it's like the first card, so it's top left on the print, like on the cutout. So it's hard to get them in a good grade and all that.
Nasty Nick, is that what it is? Nasty Nick?
Yeah, Nasty Nick. Yep.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, Atom Bomb is the one that I remember Nasty Nick, but Atom Bomb was the one that I always thought in my head was going to be the big one, because that was the one that was on like the cover of the box.
Yep.
Always pressing a button, his head going up.
Yep. You're on all the packaging. Yeah, that's right. What about, so I'm going to seg into, speaking of all that, have you thought about, have you seen that now they're doing like graded action figures, like Star Wars action figures and the Masters of the Universe and all that? Have you seen their grading? There's third-party grading for all that now, and like that's a thing. Yeah,
no, I get it. I mean, people, there are so many people that as I was a card collector as a kid, but there were a ton of kids that they didn't collect cards. They had figurines of Star Wars characters and stuff like that, and so now they want, as an adult, you want what you always wanted as a kid, right? You want the best of the best. And that's the beauty of having disposable income as an adult. Is like you finally can get your hands on all those things that you wanted. As a kid, like, the thought of having certain cards like was just a dream. And now the fact that I own some of those cards that were like dream cards is awesome. And I'm sure there's people, same thing with figurines that are just like, I always wanted that action figure. And now not only can I get that, but I can get it in a perfect condition. So I get it.
And people are doing it with retro video games too. I don't know if you saw that, but they grade those like the original Mario Brothers or Atari 2600 games. But I can I can see how somebody, kind of in the same way where you look at like, an old baseball card, where someone, that's like a piece of nostalgia for them, because they're thinking of like when they were a kid, because it's in the box and brand new in the box and everything, and it's graded, so it's sealed. So it's kind of like a piece of your childhood, sealed there for you to like look at and admire. So I can kind of understand that one too, even though I haven't bought any of them or anything like that. But it intrigues me though, kind of the things that people collect for whatever reason that is.
Yeah, my cousin actually collects Nintendo games, like old Nintendo games, and it's like he gets these games that like nobody ever owned, like that nobody.
Yeah.
And they suck. Like they all suck.
Yeah, terrible games.
Yeah, they're terrible games. There's a reason why there were so few printed, because they sucked.
Oh, I mean, my 5-year-old, he literally watches with me all those games. And you remember how hard those games were, like Ghosts and Goblins or Mega Man or any of those games. We'll watch, literally, there's guys that have beat those games and they put it on YouTube or on Twitch or whatever, and it makes it onto YouTube. And so I'll watch the playthrough with him, so that I can see, like how those games ended. Like, oh, that's the final boss in that game. I played that for like 500 hours when I was 8 and never got past the 3rd level or whatever.
You ever call the Nintendo hotline?
No. I had the Nintendo Power magazines trying to like get the codes and all that, but I didn't call the hotline. No.
Yeah, you call the hotline. It was like $5 like a minute.
Yeah.
And I called a couple times, like, because I needed help with like Zelda or something like that. And
yeah,
I'm embarrassed to say that, but I did
it. That's what these channels are for, so we can talk about all the stuff. The wives all go to bed. We can't talk to them about this. All right, guys. I think we're going to wrap up. We're right at the hour 15-minute mark, and Joe and I are probably about to pass out. So we're going to go ahead and just wrap it up. But thank you very much for joining tonight. Appreciate it. If you have not been to Joe's channel, SilverJackify is his YouTube channel. It's fantastic. It gives a lot of really good kind of tips and tricks for collectors, but then he also shows different parts of his collection, why he bought them, and different pieces, and it's good stuff. So check it out.
Thanks.
All right, Joe. Thanks very much. Stay tuned, or stick around, I mean, and I'll see you in a minute. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Guys.